For months, Ariel Ortega's paychecks would bounce when he went to deposit them at his bank each Friday. He says he never saw the promised overtime pay for his extra hours on Saturdays remodeling a 12-floor apartment building in Brooklyn. Mr. Ortega considered quitting. But when he voiced concerns, his boss, Michael Stathakis, would grow agitated and threaten not to pay the remainder of what he was owed if he quit, Mr. Ortega said. It was December, and it was cold, so it would be hard to get another construction job, Mr. Ortega, who is owed hundreds of dollars in wages and overtime pay, said in Spanish. I had to stick through it. Mr. Ortega, 30, was vindicated last week when his employer, Whisk Remodeling Corp., owned by Mr. Stathakis, pleaded guilty to fraud, admitting he failed to pay Mr. Ortega and dozens of other workers, many of them immigrants, more than $90,000 in wages. Mr. Ortega's case is not unique, and prosecutors in New York have taken note. District attorneys in all 5 boroughs of New York City and in other counties, in coordination with state agencies, have ratcheted up efforts against wage theft in the construction industry. A string of indictments this year detailed more than $2.5 million in unpaid wages for more than 400 construction workers in Manhattan and beyond, Cyrus R. Vance Jr., the Manhattan District Attorney, said at a news conference on Monday. By coordinating our efforts across county lines, we're putting the industry on notice, Mr. Vance said. If you fail to pay workers in Manhattan, you can't just set up shop elsewhere in the region and repeat the same crime. Low-wage workers across a range of industries nationwide are often denied adequate overtime pay and paid less than the minimum wage, research shows. Sometimes workers are not paid at all. The allegations presented by New York prosecutors in 9 cases across 5 jurisdictions reveal a pattern. Employers often falsified payroll summaries and underpaid workers by issuing bad checks or failing to pay the prevailing wage. One construction company failed to pay $13,000 in wages, and another as much as $700,000, prosecutors say. The $2.5 million in unpaid wages announced by prosecutors may seem insignificant compared to the estimated $1 billion in lost wages that affect tens of thousands of workers in New York each year. But officials and worker advocates say the cases may deter employers from conducting such wage violations in the future. These are examples of the worst cases out there, said Manuel Castro, executive director at New Immigrant Community Empowerment, a group that advocates for immigrant workers. We're in a construction boom in New York, which means there are more opportunities for exploitation. In New York, workers lose approximately $10 million to $20 million per week in unpaid wages, according to a report commissioned by the U.S. Department of Labor, and New York workers who are not citizens of the United States are 3 times more likely to be cheated, the report said. Immigrant workers like Mr. Ortega, who speaks little English, are susceptible to underpayment because of language barriers.